feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Shrimp Tank. We're all virtual here today. I'm your co-host, Ted Jenkin, of course, with my co-host, Lee Heisman. We've got our guest today, Ernesto Mandowsky. He is the CEO of CPD Advisors, and we're going to talk about the cash flow machine. We're going to talk about how to capture honey, Lee, and so much more today. For those of you that are tuning in for the Shrimp Tank for the first time or watching this video at all, just remember first, if you're in your car or you're just listening on your phone, you can always get us at Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, iHeartRadio, anywhere that you find us. We get thousands and thousands of downloads. It's crazy how many people are following the Shrimp Tank right now to listen to these stories of entrepreneurs and their combination of book smarts and street smarts and how they put it all together to start, grow, and run a successful business. And don't forget, go on to YouTube, hit the Shrimp Tank podcast. Make sure that you click the button, subscribe to get all the great videos of all of our entrepreneurs, and make sure that you hit that notifications bell. That's going to be important. So all of those videos come into your inbox and everything else like that. Lee, I just thought before we get started with Ernesto today, I'm wondering, and we can bring him in for this, what's all of your thoughts about the, and Lee probably didn't see this yet, and maybe Ernesto, you haven't, but the inflation data came out today, and it still says that we're in massively high inflation. Everyone says it's going to cool off, but how long do you all think this is going to last, and what are you seeing out there?
Well, Ernesto, before you jump in, I'm going to say I've been around Ted for goodness, again, we talked about dog years earlier, how things, add up. I'm with Ted for a year. It feels like 7 years, but it feels like a lifetime with you, Ted. And you being in the financial world, what I've learned from you, Ted, over the past 4 to 6 years, the market, the financial area, the information, it used to be 2 + 2 = 4. Now there's just a lot of emotion driving decisions, Ted. So no matter what the data shows, and Ernesto, we'll turn it to you, the data is showing certain things, but it still feels like emotion is driving a lot of the decisions from our government. Would you agree with that?
Is that for me or for Ted?
Wide open.
Listen, I'm going to tell you that the world is very disconnected right now from this sense that when you hear these numbers on TV, and business owners really feel this day to day, they're the ones that know the best, and they talk about inflation. There are lots of different things that go into it, but the reason so many people are still feeling like what they're hearing on TV is disconnected from what they feel in their wallet is because food inflation is basically double regular inflation. And when people go out to the grocery store and Whole Foods takes their whole paycheck, when people go out to dine out and they say, how could I have spent $120? I sat here for breakfast with my 2 kids, my wife and I. Where do we spend $120 for breakfast? And the prices for travel and entertainment continue to skyrocket. Concert tickets, sporting tickets, going to hotels, airlines, all have skyrocketed. So, people can look at inflation and it feels like when you see it in the news, it's coming down, but pragmatically at home, it's just really not.
Ernesto, what are your thoughts?
we're going to get into it more in the podcast, but I'm definitely a huge contrarian on how I view a lot of these things. Personally, I don't get too hung up on the news because I know hysteria, inflation, it's up, creating mass panic, fear. Oh, your money's not going to take you as far. I kind of view, okay, there's inflation. How can we inflate ourselves? How can we increase the amount of value that we're giving to the market to be in parallel with the rise in inflation so that people pay you more money? How can you justify raising your price so that you can keep up with the inflation? Like, how can people feel like you raising your prices is actually in line with the additional service that you're providing? Like, how can you as an entrepreneur innovate in your own business model to double the amount of value that you're giving so that even just a 10% price increase, people are like, oh yeah, makes total sense. Like, you're an amazing vendor. You're an amazing service provider. I want to support you in these crazy times.
So Ernesto, what you're saying is you're doubling down on yourself. You're looking at the finish line. You're not looking at the competitors of the market. you say, let me double down on myself, my business, the products and services that I offer. Maybe you don't have to go after everybody in the marketplace, but you go after those right people that are willing to pay $1 for the highest quality service.
Exactly.
Talk about CPD. I mean, is that what CPD Advisors does?
So CPD actually stands for cross-pollination design. And I came up with the name when I wrote my first book in 2020. It's called Newbie. And Newbie is my story and how I kind of created my dream job at the intersection of restaurants, systems engineering, and tech. I was not a founder. I was definitely an employee, but I was an entrepreneur in the sense of I was creating something that didn't exist before. I wanted to do restaurants. I wanted to do systems engineering. People thought it was crazy. And I made my mark by basically finding the use cases in the market, going to a restaurant group saying, hey, you need to use a CRM because this is how you're going to be able to keep track of your guests, of your data. This is how you're going to be able to serve them more effectively. This is what the Ritz-Carlton does. Like, why don't you do it? And I kind of like forced myself into the market and created my own niche. And in that journey, it was really painful. Like, no one really understood me. No one trained me. I didn't have onboarding. I didn't have amazing resources that, like, today, when you see all the DoorDash and all the tech that's out there, none of that existed 6 years ago, 7 years ago.
Is this where,
so
Ernesto, is this where the whole 6P playbook came from? Is that just where it got designed?
Maybe subconsciously. I mean, I worked in restaurants. I worked in a startup, a point of sale company. I then went back into restaurants with the Palm restaurant, which is an iconic steakhouse.
No doubt.
And inside all of those experiences, I was doing project management. I was setting up CRMs. I was setting up automation. I was doing analysis. I was doing monthly reconciliations, weekly planning, all of these different operational elements that happen. I was doing that in those roles. And so after I wrote my book, which is inspired by bees and honey and how bees cross-pollinate through going to different flowers and extracting the nectar and creating that honey, I said, oh, this is cross-pollination. This is what every human needs to do, whether they're an entrepreneur or an employee. We all have to create our own honey and we have to offer it back into the world. And so I was doing that. I did that through the book, through restaurants and tech. And now my honey currently is business systems, process, culture design. And that's what CPD comes in. We come in, we design the cross-pollination within a startup so that founders can feel supported when they're out there doing the thing, the founder visionary thing, like collecting all this nectar, talking to clients, vendors, teams, partners, all these things. We come in, we design the infrastructure so that they have somewhere to put all those projects, all those ideas, all those tasks, all those things that they need to do. So it's in one place instead of a Trello board, a Jira board.
We started this thing talking about inflation and knowing that you've been in the restaurant space, and there are a lot of restaurateurs that have been on our show, a lot of them that are, in the business today. How are you coaching restaurants to manage these rising costs of food and what they have to do with their prices and the rising cost of labor, the demand for people to make more money, and at the same time trying to manage margins, which were very thin in restaurants to begin with?
Yeah. I mean, I think restaurateurs still have not adopted the mentality of true analysis of their business, truly understanding what is in their OpEx of the P&L and how can they cut costs by implementing technology solutions. Not only that, when you're talking about frequencies, customer frequencies, like how many restaurateurs are implementing win-back emails? Like, hey, haven't seen you in 30 days. Here's a free smoothie. Hey, would love to, here's your anniversary is coming up. Here's a free cake for you and your wife. Or having these automated processes that are happening without any excess cost, without them having to lift a finger. I don't think restaurateurs really embody that idea of automation and incremental value.
I saw this recently, Ernesto. There is a local place near my office called The Nest. And once they get your phone number, they definitely blast you with 20% off, 15% off, free cup of coffee. And doing a great job with it. But you're right. The other 99 places that I eat, It's maybe a sporadic email every once in a while, but they just don't really treat you like a repeating customer. That's part of the problem.
Correct.
Well, so Ernesto, go back a little bit, and sometimes very successful entrepreneurs like yourself, and this is not your fault. We've been doing this. Ted and I have been doing this now for nearly 7 years, Ted, and we have over nearly 1,500 entrepreneurs we've interviewed across the country in our 15 different studios as well. And we're so thankful. Like I said, we'd love for you to be. You're not that far in Miami from Atlanta, and we usually do them in person, but because of your success, we're glad to get this opportunity on Zoom. But a lot of entrepreneurs kind of fast track their success. Hey, I just suddenly did this and did this and this, and it makes it seem like it was easy. But Ernesto, when you started talking about you created a swim lane for yourself early on, before the DoorDashes, were you working for another company? Did you open up your own entity? Give us a little more of the grind of how, because you kind of just jumped into, hey, I created a whole swim lane, and you jump over, like most very humble entrepreneurs. You forget all the grind, and everybody listening says, well, this is easy.
Yeah. Well, definitely not easy. Definitely being mindful of like, how deep in the story do I get,
Well,
But
did you own a business at that time? Did you not own the business?
No.
What happened, and how did you transition from,
So I read the book, Ritz-Carlton, CRM. I was like, wow, this is it. I went to a nightclub in New York. I said, hey, you're the best nightclub in New York City. You must use CRM software to keep track of guests. And they like looked at me like, what are you talking about? And after I built a project for them, someone said, hey, you did tech consulting. I'm like, oh, what's tech consulting? So then I discovered Deloitte, which is a Big Four consulting tax accounting firm. And I joined them in a tech consulting fashion. During the week, I was doing W-2 employee project management work. And on the weekends, I was doing the entrepreneur side hustle thing, trying to launch a digital bread, a challah bakery. If you don't know what challah is a Jewish traditional bread.
Hey, you're talking to two. You got two of us right here.
There we go. Okay, we got to do a challah party soon.
But I think
we get the deep, Lee. I get the deep Fleming at the.
I was going to say the challah. The
challah.
Shalom Yisrael. Sorry.
In the program,
you meant hamotzi lechem min haaretz is what you meant.
Oh, very good. Yes, I'll do the prayer over the wine later for you. Sorry, Ernesto, you got two Jews on the line here. So
we got three Jews on the line.
Oh, Ernesto Mandowsky. That's a valid point. I didn't know about Ernesto I didn't know many first names with Ernesto.
Yeah. So I was joking with them like, hey, I'm starting a challah bakery. How do I get involved? And then I would also say, hey, I'm a systems engineer. I want to break into restaurants. And they didn't really have anything for me. But after a year after that program ended, we were starting this big visionary entrepreneur from Denmark was coming to New York, and he was starting a food hall, a Michelin-starred restaurant, a commissary kitchen, a commissary coffee, an import-export business, a culinary school, a nonprofit, all these things. And one of the instructors was going to be one of the general managers. And she said, hey, like, we kind of need your help. We need some systems person. And that's what kind of got me the job. And I was in a W-2 capacity working at this company, but I was very much an entrepreneur, intrapreneur is, I think, the technical term.
And what we say, Ernesto, is we call on the show a wantrepreneur, people that are really wanting to get into it as well. So at that phase, you were a wantrepreneur.
Ernesto, talk to us. We get a lot, I always love talking to engineers because they're always a lot smarter than me. And when you're talking about building systems and you have business owners that are starting businesses, where do you see the biggest mistakes they make as they try to build out the systems in their companies? Or when you go into a company, what are the biggest areas that just seem to be glaring with you across the section of business owners that you work with?
The biggest area is they try to use too many tools.
Right.
And to make it really hit home, it's like they're on Apple Notes, they're using the Reminders app, they're using a Trello board, they're using their inbox, and they're using their pen and paper. And I think that hits like every early stage founder. And because they're using 5 different tools, it's already chaos. Many professionals, high-performing professionals, entrepreneurs or not, have anywhere between 15 and 30 tabs open right now on your Google Chrome. And that's the same parallel as kind of what I said. They're using the tabs and the journal and the inbox and the Trello and the Apple Notes, and just the context switching all day, every day. It is killing our productivity.
And Ernesto, I have to quote your website, which I thought was amazing. You just said all of that, and Ted, he said it causes chaos, right? They're in chaos. And your slogan, I wanted to comment on that. Can you elaborate? Turning chaos into
Cash
cash flow. I love that. Turning chaos into cash flow. So if you have more than 5 tabs open or 5 events that you're using, you have chaos. How does someone turn that chaos into cash flow? I love that term you phrased there on your website.
Well, let me ask you, what do you think of when I say cash flow?
I'm thinking of making money one way or another,
Okay.
income coming in, of course. Now,
Okay.
getting paid is a whole nother story, but I just think of revenue and income.
Sure. Okay. Okay. Ted, how about you?
The words EBITDA come to my mind all the
Okay.
time. I live and breathe in that. So it's just like,
Yeah.
how do I increase my bottom line?
So the finance people, the entrepreneurs are thinking money, cash, sales, growth. The ops systems person will think of cash flow as creating a system to have freedom, love, and opportunities to win. And the key word is system. Creating that system, creating a project management system, creating a sales operations system, creating a marketing, a lead gen system, a systematic way of producing content, attracting the right audience, funneling them into your sales call, converting them into dollars, and then fulfilling on those dollars, and then reselling and or creating a referral out of that. Like creating that whole automated process is the
Ernesto,
thing.
so you're from soup to nuts, from A to Z. It isn't just I'm doing front end marketing. You're doing marketing. You're doing the process, the conversion, the follow up. Is that accurate? Are you doing everything?
We're an advisory firm, and so we kind of want to be that fractional COO that is advising the founder in designing all of that. I'm working with I don't specialize in every single part of it, but we have partners that will focus on the email side. Other partners will focus on like the referral marketing side, the copy content create. Like we don't do it all, but we focus on the framework, which is the 6 Ps.
One of the things that was really interesting that you're doing is about creating, and I want to hear more about this today, a sustainable entrepreneur community. And Lee and I have been very big in that in Atlanta, in really doing everything we can to facilitate entrepreneurs in every vertical in order to be able to help all of our businesses grow and collectively our community here in Atlanta. And you've done something here called 1 million cups. And I don't want to hear about that. What does that mean to you to create a sustainable entrepreneurship community besides, getting hammered at the bar with other entrepreneurs and talking about your woes?
Yeah. For me, I think I use the word sustainable because many people can resonate with sustainable, the word sustainability. The real word I really want to call it is a regenerative business system. We're not just sustaining ourselves, but we're actually regenerating and creating more value than like the chaos of entrepreneurship. Originally, so I used to volunteer with an organization called 1 Million Cups, and that was an organization that invites entrepreneurs to come on and share their story in a stress-free environment to get feedback. And for me, I feel like the entrepreneurial experience, we've spoken about chaos, we've spoken about the tabs and the content, that becomes very overwhelming and draining and leads to burnout. And so my belief through my business systems and my frameworks is that it actually creates the freedom and the peace that we actually feel freaking amazing when we're doing the whole creation thing. And so it's kind of like my mission, like with the vehicle of systems and operations, but to like make entrepreneurship like great again, like great and exciting and fulfilling, and shift the narrative away from like, you got to be a 90-hour-a-week hustler and like it's a slog and it's crazy. And like, people love to dramatize like the journey. Like, yeah, it is crazy, but like, when you have things like business systems, it could be fun. It could be exciting. It could be like super creative and different and unique. And so that's kind of like my mission with designing sustainable entrepreneurship, regenerative entrepreneurship.
So Ernesto, I have two comments. The first is a comment, and it's for our listeners to go to your website. I know you have multiple websites, of course, but I like the Ernesto Mandowsky one. And I will tell you, Ted,
Yeah.
I have never in my life seen every website. And again, for viewers, listeners today, if you go to a website and you scroll to the bottom, and Ted, you can see what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
You scroll to the bottom, it has a LinkedIn icon, it has a Twitter icon, but I've never seen an Ernesto Mandowsky icon, which is really great. You have that right next to it's a little face down there. So first off, I want to have a compliment because next to the LinkedIn and the Instagram and the Twitter, you've got a delicious looking Ernesto Mandowsky icon. So let's start there. I've never seen that before. But there's a theme that I'm listening to with you. And again, you're being very humble in terms of your engineering background and how smart you are logistically. But usually those people, Ernesto, that have that logistical expertise that you provide your clients are pretty boring and not in tune with themselves. And I've heard this from you. I've heard about what does cash flow mean? And Ted says EBITDA, and I say money coming in and revenue. You said, I'm really trying to create a peace and loving environment. And then if you go to a page on your website, you don't have 2 + 2s and 0s and 1s as you would think someone in your position has. You have words like confidence, abundance, hustle, failure, loyalty, wisdom. This is very different, Ernesto. Would you mind elaborating a little bit about why this seems to be a theme? Listening to some of your responses, looking at your website, it's quite the opposite of the detailed development pieces and more about that type of, the word when I say touchy-feely isn't meant in a bad way, but these emotional components that you keep leaning into. Can you elaborate on why I keep hearing this from you?
Yeah.
Because you smiled when I started bringing this up, and it definitely strikes a chord.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I've been a student of personal development since I was 15. I watched The Secret, I watched the movie, The Law of Attraction. I mean, the whole book, the book of that I wrote, Newbie. I mean, it was this whole journey, and maybe there was like a little bit of victiminess to it. The struggle. But I think like even when I first started my 2 years ago, CPD and the journey, and I was like, yeah, guys, like I'm gonna do projects and we're gonna do CRM, we're gonna do process, we're gonna do automation, sorry if no one curses, but like no one gives a shit about your projects or your automation or your structure. No one cares about that. No one cares. They like shy away. They like entrepreneurs are not excited by that. And then in 2021, I started a personal brand journey with a gentleman named Rory Baden at the Brand Builders Group. And he developed a personal brand agency that coaches people like Lewis Howes and Ed Milet, Shalene Johnson, like the top names in personal brand. And I always had a limiting belief around myself that like, I'm not a good marketer. I'm not a good salesperson. And so through joining that program, kind of learned like, okay, speak about some payoffs that people want. Speak about like what is going to attract and gravitate people to you as a brand. And through that work, like, I realized like, these are the terms. This is what entrepreneurs are like lit up by, like confidence and abundance and structure. Like these are the things that really resonate with people. And so if I'm not speaking their language, they're never going to hire a robot, or maybe they will, but like they're not lit up by it.
When you're looking at the workplaces today and you're talking to business owners, how are you helping them think through the challenges of where this whole hybrid model of work will end up? It seems like it is a major tug of war right now that COVID is not over, but technically it's over. And some companies are saying report to work full time or else. Some companies are saying we don't care if you live in Alaska, and there's a combination in between. How are you helping entrepreneurs think about this? Because I do think it's going to be an ongoing challenge.
Totally. I'm not there yet where I'm advising, these massive companies, but let's pretend like I was. And I would say COVID and the inflation and all the crazy change the world has kind of been through the last 2 years, I think it's another invitation of taking a look at our culture and like, why do you need to be a control freak and mandate people show up in your office? Like the world is changing. Why are you holding on to pre-2020 world? Like, you know what? Hold on to it, but like your people will leave and then your organization will crumble. And then like, great, you want to be right? Like, how far is that taking you?
No,
So,
it's
you
true.
know,
And Ernesto, I'll defend some of those decisions. I'll play the offsetting point, which is when someone's spending hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in rent, they want to justify sending people back into the office at some point.
yeah, yes. I mean,
I
yeah,
didn't say that's the
can't,
correct direction. I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying there probably is some other
right,
motivating factors.
right. Oh, there definitely are plenty of motivating factors, but they can mandate that being correct but at the potential risk of losing people.
Very, very true. Ernesto, I got to jump in. I know as we're wrapping up here, I got to jump in and ask you a very direct one. I keep listening to that emotional segment that you talk about that people resonate with, the CEOs that you deal with and decision makers. And you talked about peace, love. I look at the website as we talk about hustle and wisdom. And through the abundance and confidence, I only see one negative. I see failure here, right? It's only really one negative. You know, through your journey as an entrepreneur and as you continue on in your young state, as young as you are in your entrepreneurial journey, give me your top thing that pops into your mind as one of the biggest failures that you've experienced and learned from and didn't see coming. Because I have heard nothing but emotionally positive words, but you do have that one failure on there, and I'm sure you've learned from it. Give me the one where you said, I didn't see this coming through my personal journey, and what you do to pivot for it.
Yeah, I when I joined the Palm, my old boss was like, "This is gonna be amazing. You're gonna reinvent everything." I joined the Palm, and in my third week, a $100 million headline hit the news, and our owner lost a $100 million lawsuit due to some issues we don't need to get involved in. And my whole like initial plan of coming in to like reinvent the whole organization quickly went to shit. And I had to pivot. I mean, I had to do what the owner needed to do. And I was in a long distance relationship and it wasn't going well and I was depressed and I was really in a really tough state. When you're inside of that, it's really hard to stick your head up and feel like you're calm. But you know, over time, the experience passed, and you know, you look back and you're like, wow, like that is exactly what I needed to learn X, Y, and Z. And a lot of times when we're dealing with failure, we want to victimize or whatever, or blame or shame. And it's like, no, like take a step back. This failure is great. It's just feedback and you're learning from it. It just takes some time to digest it and like really look inside of that failure. Like, what is the opportunity in here? So that's kind of like what failure is.
Well, I mean, putting together everything that you've done with this 6P playbook and this comment today that I agree with, Lee. I love it. How to turn chaos into cash flow, because some business owners have controlled chaos and some business owners have uncontrolled chaos, but all businesses have chaos. The question is, how do you turn it into cash flow? How can people find you, learn more about you, maybe engage you in helping them tweak these systems, the technology, simplifying everything so they can scale their businesses, become more profitable, and ultimately maybe exit the business one day?
Totally, yeah. Well, people can come to www.freesystemscall.com. Make it pretty black and white. We'll get on the phone. We'll talk about where you're at, what systems you're working with, what's broken, what's not, what we could work on. But yeah, freesystemscall.com. We'll schedule a call and figure out if I can help you.
Do you have
make that transfer.
a favorite piece of technology that you might recommend to business owners now that they're the one that you like the most?
Totally. Yeah, Notion is my jam. Notion is an unbelievable tool. It can take 7 of your tools and make it into one, really compressed. You can run your entire business on Notion.
Wow.
and an email tool as well. But otherwise, Notion is my total jam.
Well, I want to make one quick shout out real quick. I'll be in Miami where Ernesto is. And I saw a commitment on his website that if you schedule an in-person meeting, I get an opportunity to taste his homemade challah bread. And I see a picture there with it. If I'm incorrect, Ernesto, if I'm finding the time to hold a cup of coffee with you, I'm getting some homemade challah.
You are getting homemade challah. I was at an event this morning and I brought 3 loaves of challah bread to partners of mine. So yeah, it'll happen.
Ted, we will break some bread.
Hey,
when I
listen,
bring it back.
there's nothing better than challah French toast. That's the best stuff if you know how to make it. And you heard today, folks, you should go to freesystemscall.com, schedule a meeting with Ernesto. I mean, listen, it's hard enough to be a business owner. If you can find tremendous systems and operations people like Ernesto that can help you really figure out these challenges in your business, it might unleash your potential or unlock your potential to even greater heights and grow your business. That's what we do at the Shrimp Tank every week. Find this combination of street smarts, find this combination of book smarts, and Ernesto is full of them. So go to freesystemscall.com. And Ernesto, thanks so much for joining us on the Shrimp Tank today.
Thank you for having me.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.